Hello, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Sorry it's been a little dry lately, but yeah, I ended up catching that that one virus that's been going around, if you know what I mean, and it's been a very slow week, but finally I came across something that I actually felt motivated to really talk about. Now, it is sort of a weird thing to talk about in terms of structure and everything, on top of the illness, so if this is a little bit more disorganized than usual, then you know why. It's something that I want to do, is to talk about small-scale animation projects, and this situation here is one of the first times when I've been presented with a very clear opportunity to do that. It's called Hothouse 13, and what Hothouse is, it's this like training course that's offered to what they refer to as like emerging artists, emerging filmmakers rather, and this is something that's offered by the Montreal Animation Studio. And then, I guess for a number of years now, the NFB, or the National Film Board of Canada, has been, what do we say, publishing these, I guess? They put them up on their website in full for you to watch. And if you've been around for the channel for a while, then you know that I've been talking about doing some big giant video on Canadian animation for probably over a year now. And I think what that's turning into is just an ongoing fascination with Canadian animation, because for one thing, there's way too much to talk about. There's some incredible talent and skill in Canada in terms of the animation industry, and also just small-scale animation and things like that, which is what we'll be talking about today. So yeah, it's probably just something that I'll continue to talk about over time. And at least based on my experience so far, the NFB is just kind of great. Like it's just a really good resource, not only for filmmakers, but for people who are interested in film and specifically interested in animation. There's a whole rich history of the NFB supporting animation. I already made a video about that a while back. And here is just another great thing. They just had a video pop up on their channel. It says, hey, Hothouse 13 is here. We're not even going to explain what it is in the video, but look, here's some cool animated shorts that you can watch. And that's exactly what I did, and I'm going to try to talk about them. I mean, I'll briefly talk about each of these videos on their own, and then kind of talk about, I don't know, collective trends or like overall impressions of the whole project. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing here today. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. First up, Bak Il, or Tambor, from Grace On, a Korean title and based on a legend. Okay, so here's the description provided on the website. The Korean legend of Ungnyo, a bear reborn as a woman, becomes a hard-hitting, hypnotic improvisation on themes of transformation and quarantine. Okay, so this one, yeah, it looks like physical media throughout, but yeah, I would guess charcoal. There are a couple of things throughout that almost feel like chalk, but it's a very arresting look. Not the most uncommon thing in independent animation, especially in like the fine arts, but I love the look overall. I mean, it's very strong line work, a great sense of flow throughout, and yeah, I mean, as that description implies, we have, you know, two characters essentially quarantined in a little tiny hut. Although a very interesting element is that throughout these 100 days, you can clearly see outside of the tent thing. Like there's no like door, and I think that's a really nice touch, not only visually but just conceptually. It's something that we can all relate to, of course, and just on the theme of quarantine in general, we're gonna see a lot of that. There's quite a bit of an emphasis on a shared emphasis on like isolation, sense of loneliness, that kind of thing, singular characters, confined spaces. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear that was like a working theme that they kind of gave the artist, or something along those lines. Here, it does end, like there is a success for our quote-unquote lead character, I suppose, in that this bear does indeed become a human woman. However, it sort of has this interesting ending. I don't know the original legend, of course, so I can't compare it to that, but it seems to end this like friendship or companionship between our lead character and this other monster thing that I don't know what it is, but I love the look of it. And yeah, it has a pretty, like, I wouldn't call it like joyful for the majority of the short, but it does at least feel like very active. You feel a concentration of energy inside the hut thing, and then once you're outside and the monster thing just kind of abandons the human woman character, it's just sort of sad, it's just sort of dour. And that's really neat because you assume, based on the premise, like, oh, this is the moment of of like victory, or this was the goal they were aiming for. It was clearly a choice to undergo this transformation. And it's like, oh, well, what was the point? Yeah, it's mysterious in a way. Again, without knowing the original legend, I'm just in the dark. Regardless, I really enjoyed it. I like that sense of melancholy towards the end. It certainly works with the theme of, quarantine and isolation and all that. And not too much else to say on this one, so I'll move on to short number 2, which is Bang. I can pronounce that one just fine. And this is from an artist called Lucas Conway. A very simple idea. Obviously, it's extremely visual, and in terms of narrative here, we're really only working with just kind of the implication of a story. Again, absolutely about quarantine, maybe not quarantine specifically, but definitely isolation. So we have an implication of a space as well. We don't really often see the wall that our character is hitting its head against over and over throughout the short, but we see the effects of it. We get the sound for every single hit, and in fact we only get one tiny little snippet where the character seems to be just outdoors and completely free and running around. Everything else is just the absence of all that. It's just like clear frustration, but also just routine in a sense, just banging your head against the wall over and over again. The repetition is very strong here. I love how they also vary up the sound effects for some of these different hits. And then yeah, with almost every hit, there's some major visual change, even in the style of our main figure, the color work, and it all just happens so fast. This is what I'm talking about when I refer to the density of these shorts. There's so much happening. Plenty of this stuff is only there for a handful of frames, and it's absolutely worth watching multiple times and pausing to see different details and different art styles that come up very briefly. There's one sort of really smoothed out cartoony style that I really like in here that's only up for, I don't know, a second or two, and then they move on. Anyway, a very cool short. I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely one that I really like to rewatch. It's pretty great. Next up, so this one's called 100 Ghosts. Animator's name is Noncido Kumalo. A woman wakes up hearing mysterious sounds and finds herself confronted with an astonishing, surreal world brought to life by her innermost fears. So this is a case where I actually really appreciate that description from a certain angle, because this is definitely one of the most abstract shorts of the whole Hothouse bunch. This one is, yeah, I'll go ahead and use the word dense once again. This also seems to be probably the only one that uses CG, 3D models and everything. I think so. We have this figure here in a very small room with no windows or anything. Also, I really enjoy the texturing for this short, because instead of just getting like ultra clean CG textures, that would be pretty standard in this kind of work, this kind of scenario, we get like, I guess, painted textures for pretty much everything we see. I guess watercolor for the most part, like walls and floors, just seems like a watercolor texture applied to the object. Yeah, there's some Medusa imagery with the hair, we could say. They sort of look like tentacles or snakes or something. So then we have this repeating and complementary imagery of opening doors within the body of the figure. And then we have a bunch of keys. So there are keys on the ends of the hair stuff. And it's really not long at all before the figure disappears, and we just have a key ring. Just a key ring left on the bed. And that's it. We also have some sort of haunting, strange, but also enjoyable vocalizations going on in the background for a good part of the short. A few interesting sound effects here, but I don't know if I would have interpreted this one in the same way as the description. It's really tough, because it is something that I appreciate. It is a short that I enjoy, but again, like, it's something that feels really at home in the fine art space as opposed to like commercial animation. So much of it is left up to the interpretation, which can be really great too. But yeah, I don't know. I would more just call it a mood piece. Like, even without that description, if you just watch the thing, you get a very strong sense for the mood that's being conveyed here. I would even say that it's a fairly relatable kind of tone that's being struck here. But beyond that, I don't have too much else to say about it. Very interesting, plenty to think about. Please go and check it out for yourself, and feel free to share your thoughts. Next up, yet another short with 100 in the title. One of 3 actually out of the 6 that have the number 100. So I don't know if that was yet another theme or like prompt given to the animators. I have no idea. But this one is 100 Miles by Louis Baudart. This one, completely different world from pretty much everything else we've talked about so far, where it is not very abstract at all. It's very colorful, very saturated, and incredibly easy to watch. So this one also has a story. There's a family on a road trip, and as we've seen in plenty of other road trip shorts or movies or just real life experiences, the kids get restless and they start fighting with each other. It upsets the parent. It's easy, it's fun, the style is fantastic. This is definitely something that I would call commercial animation. Like, it's just accessible, it clicks. It's in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which I found sort of interesting. Looks great. I mean, 4:3 in general, I really like the look of, but yeah, in terms of composition here, looks fantastic. Also, there's some movement here. Like, it almost looks like film grain, so maybe this was captured on film. I'm not really sure at all, but I at least got that impression for it. It gives it a very nice visual texture. Talking about fluidity, or, you know, the animation itself, when the kids sort of transform into the monster homunculus thing, it just looks so cool. Really, really neat, just sort of liquidy, goopy animation there. And honestly, that's about it. I have a feeling that plenty of people who watch this short will really like it. It's very easy to like. Not super new in terms of concept or execution, really, but still a very strong style, and it's very well executed. Next up, number 5 is the Commute from Taran, Padma, Kumar, and this one also has a pretty straightforward and clear story. It's about a person in Toronto specifically, we know it's Toronto because they mentioned in the short, just trying to navigate the city, literally just navigating the city. So it's very much just packed with visual cleverness. It's that very classic animation thing of just, okay, here's a visual from the real world. Let's do some really creative and interesting things with that. And here it's fantastic. So we have imagery from clearly, like, you know, public transit or subway maps. So the colors there, which are typically, you know, really, really bright, saturated colors, those inform the color palette of the entire short, which is extremely saturated, very bold, very poppy. The lines move, get kicked out of the way. They have all their different kinks and things, and the little dots. We have a navigator dot that you would see on like Google Maps or something to follow the character around. That becomes a physical object. Just really smart, funny, clever, and also just the general, I don't know, the strokes. Whatever digital brush is being used here, where everything just feels like it's falling apart, especially the character here himself is like so fuzzy. It almost looks like clouds or vapor or something. It feels very modern. Again, this is another style that like we have seen before, specifically in animation you can find online. You'll find a lot of hyper-saturated stuff. I would even call it post-digital to a certain degree. And yeah, just another short that's very easy to enjoy, just a lot of fun to watch, and get a little bit of voice acting too. But yeah, it does capture that feeling of like trying to find your way around a new place. I also just think it's funny that, oh wow, look, they have public transportation. How nice is that? Sure, it might be a little tricky, but at least it's there. Anyway, and the 6th and final short here of Hothouse 13 is Lo Siento, technically, but written out as Lo 100 toe, and the wordplay here, I mean, if you speak Spanish, there you go, but also it's just explained at the beginning of the short. It's essentially a play on words, or potentially like a typo, because the whole thing is about a character texting family members and saying, my relationship's off, my marriage is off, and then just kind of bracing for the impact and like all the crazy things that the relatives are going to say. And of course, lo siento, sorry to hear that kind of thing. 100 cien, it's a fun pun. It's very nice. This is from Carla Monterosa, by the way, and the description provided on the website is, when Delia announces her breakup over a group chat, she's bombarded with inappropriate and comedic remarks from her Salvadoran family. And that's exactly what we get. An interesting thing that I didn't notice about this short the first time through anyway, because I was so focused on just like the action of the story, I guess we could say, is that at least for the opening, we have these little miniature elements for the set. So we have, it's essentially hybrid. We have 2D animation superimposed on top of this little tiny model set, which is very cute, and I think it looks very nice. The character design specifically don't look all that different to me than plenty of other stuff we've seen in like contemporary cartooning or web comics and things like that. Not really a critique, just an observation there. And beyond that, I don't know, it's a neat way to attempt to visualize texting and visualize specifically a group chat or family interactions through a phone, because we've seen in so many different movies and things at this point where they'll try to visualize texting in a certain way, and some of those attempts are much more successful than others. And in this case, it's not only visualizing the texting and the conversation and the emojis and all that, but also just capturing the fact that this is familial interaction. It's a very neat great idea. I think the essence of this type of conversation is captured pretty darn well. It is light on narrative. It really is just that basic setup and then the ensuing conversation. The ensuing conversation isn't even that long. It just kind of ends. Everybody laughs a little bit, and then it's done. Just kind of neat. Yet another one that I feel is very accessible for most viewers. It's not trying to be ultra complicated and abstract. It is straightforward. It's the final short. Now, just to touch on some general things here about like the Hothouse concept, I guess, and these shorts as a whole. I appreciate the range. I especially appreciate the element of cultural diversity to the group that seems to have been a pretty clear goal of theirs. It works. We get not only a variety of like languages here, but we also get a pretty wide variety of, just visual styles and ideas and even mediums through which the animation was actually executed. And I don't know, it almost feels like a straight split of 3 and 3 between like more dense so-called artistic work and then more accessible commercial work. I don't know if that was on purpose either, but I think it works just fine in this context. Not everybody's trying to get an animation job with like Cartoon Network, you know what I mean? Like, not everybody's goal is to work on some big TV show and just create stuff that is very easy to follow and straightforward. So we get the fine art stuff here. We get the easygoing, super rewatchable stuff as well. And as I already touched on with some of these shorts, there are clear connections to other contemporary independent animation happening right now. There's a huge network of artistic influence at all times for anybody doing any kind of artistic work. Not surprising, but at the same time, yeah, this kind of feels like a little time capsule of this moment. Just another great reason for Hothouse to exist in the first place. Like, sure, it helps the artists, of course, that's the main thing. But beyond that, yeah, it sets all these things apart. It shows us what's happening right now. It shows us some very original work. That work still also has ties to what other people are doing. Neat. I have only very positive feelings about the project as a whole. And now that I'm aware of it, I'm looking forward to going back through the back catalog of other years of Hothouse that they have on the NFB website, and I'm also looking forward to future Hothouse presentations, or whatever you call these. But yeah, I think that brings this to a close. Thank you so much for joining me for the whole thing. I really implore you to watch these shorts on your own. They're on the NFB website. I don't know whether they're going to put them up in full on their YouTube channel, but either way, keep an eye out for that. If you don't already follow or subscribe to the NFB, definitely worth it. Definitely worth it, even if you don't watch everything they put out. Like, we just don't have this in the US, and I'm just kind of fascinated by how often they do good work. But that's all for now, and thanks for stopping by.